there, fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Meaghan.
And I'm Shireen.
And it's September, everyone.
September.
Wait, you do that every month now. I think you've done it every time.
Well, I think you like it.
We'll pretend everyone else does too. Fall's officially on the way, so I am very excited.
This is like she's in her element.
I'm in my element right now. The Halloween stuff's gonna come out. You know, I'm just gonna start watching all spooky movies, even though it's still fucking hot outside. I don't care. Some of the evenings have been a little bit cooler recently, and I feel it, and I'm like, it's on its way. There are some fall breezes that are slowly but surely making themselves known, and I'm so excited.
The rest of us wait for summer all year, whereas Megan's give me fall.
You do not. You fucking love it when it gets cold.
I do love fall. I do. I just hate winter.
Yes, which is fine. That's understandable. Any other Canadians listening can attest to the fact that once you get past January, oh boy, are those next couple of months pretty rough for most of us.
Oh God, I don't want to think about it.
But we don't have to for a while because it's only September, Shireen.
September.
Oh God. So, in honor of not quite spooky season, because we're not there yet, but we'd like to be.
It's coming.
It's coming. We decided that for the month of September, we would talk about cozy mysteries. Maybe there are things that you read all the time. Maybe you've never read a cozy mystery, which is exciting because we're going to be able to teach you all about them. So it'll be really fun.
I mean, this is more your thing. So.
I mean, yeah, but I figured that's the kind of thing you'll be okay with that.
Oh, 100%.
Because you're well, it's not terrifying.
Yes.
It's
we like cozy.
We like cozy anything, cozy mystery, cozy fantasy, whatever.
Cozy romance.
Cozy romance. I guess romance is
cozy
kind of
holiday.
Cozy most of the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Holiday books come with their own immediate sense of cozy. I don't care what anyone says. I feel like
Unless
there's just
Krampus.
Is that a book?
No, but I'm giving an example of something that's holiday but not cozy.
I guess so. I don't know. I think there's a cozy element to it myself. All the animatronics are real cute. Anyway.
I guess so.
I like the little gingerbread man. Anyway.
Moving on.
Today, we're going to kick things off for the month by talking about kind of different elements of cozy mysteries. So, what sets it apart from, your regular mystery genre or your thrillers or things like that. What sets it apart from that? So what are kind of the elements that normally make up a cozy mystery and what that means, and why or at least I like them.
Oh yes, I like them.
They're my little intro into the spookier side of the season. So it's a really nice way to ease yourself in there. Before we do that though, Shireen, what is on your nightstand this week?
Well, I just finished reading All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. We all know how much I love Colleen Hoover.
You've never talked about it, so.
You know what? I got to give the woman one thing is she's got a catchy writing style, so it's easy to breeze through her very serious subject matter.
Okay.
This one was about a couple who are married. They are very much in love, but they're struggling with fertility. While an easy to read in terms of it being an interesting story, it's still tough to read because that people are going through this, and the main character is just absolutely tortured by the fact that she can't conceive, and it's just really describing in detail all of the emotions that she's going through and the impact that it's having to her marriage, in a really detailed way that I think you wouldn't understand if you haven't gone through this.
Okay.
So I thought it was actually, honestly, I will give her this one. It was pretty good. And I think that this is the type of book that if you were a couple struggling with fertility, and you're not able to connect, maybe your husband or your spouse is not understanding why, you're so upset and so emotionally invested. And, I guess, your whole emotional state is completely turned upside down. I think this would be a good book to give to someone who wants to empathize but just can't.
Okay.
Because like you really get into the inner workings of this woman's mind and like what she's going through, and you're just like, oh man, this is tough. Like this really sucks, you know?
Yeah, that's very heavy subject matter.
Very, very heavy. So it's good, but it's heavy. Yeah, not bad.
Okay.
More informational, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, more informational, less abusive than some of the other stuff you've told me about.
Like some of it I'm just like, no, I cannot do this. But this one I'm like, all right, yeah, I see the point of this one.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah, I'll give her that one. What about you, Meaghan? What's on your nightstand?
I am reading The Only One Left by Riley Sager, which is his most recent publication from this year.
What's it called?
The Only One Left.
Oh, you meant like it was the only one left from Riley Sager. I'm like,
name
what
of
do
the
you mean?
That's the name of the book. Yeah. Really, I'm like, where am I? Like halfway through it right now? I think so. Really fun, really like his stuff is just like, it's really tightly written. So when you want a thriller that's just sucks you in almost immediately, read Riley Sager's books. They're worth picking up that way for sure. Set in New England, a woman who's just been dealing with having been suspended from her work as like a caregiver, like a live-in nurse type of thing for a period of time, has recently been put back on the job. But the job that she's been offered, the only job she can have right now, is to go be the caretaker out on this really spooky, very gothic mansion out right on a hillside in Maine for an elderly woman who is notorious in the state for 50 to 60 years prior, having supposedly, allegedly murdered her entire family.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a Lizzie Borden kind of thing. Like they've made a rhyme about it that the kids will repeat to each other and stuff. And so she has to go out and care for her and, you know, starts to realize that there is probably a lot more to that story than everybody thinks that there is.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm really liking it so far. Very spooky, ooky, like gothic vibes, like the house and the people who work there.
There's always a spooky house in the gothic one.
Yeah, it works. It's just, that's what makes it more gothic, in my opinion. It's
like
a big ass spooky house.
Yeah.
Like good, like really, you know, sort of like interesting lead character. Very, I think what are going to be very interesting twists and turns later on in the course of the story as well. I was really into it the other night, and my fiance was doing something on the computer, and he sneezed really loud, and I jumped really fucking high because it was in the middle of some sort of description about something about creaks and stuff in the room of the woman who cannot get up and move on her own in the middle of the night, and the other one's hearing them, and she's like getting up to investigate what's going on. Oh my god.
Nice.
I can't describe to you how loud his sneezes are because they're incredibly loud.
Got a man sneeze.
Oh my god. But anyway, but I was just like not expecting it. And I jumped. He was in a different room, and I was like, oh god.
So funny. I have a Riley Sager on my bookshelf there. Maybe I should pick it up.
Oh, do you?
Something is it a lake house or something?
Oh yes, yeah. I think that was his last one before this.
Yeah.
Novel. So, yeah, that's a pretty good one too.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, very like totally different story, but yeah,
try it.
pretty good, like tight thriller, interesting, slightly haunting vibes, which is weird, but yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, his tend to go in directions that I'm not quite expecting most of the time at the end, where I'm like, oh, it's probably going to be this. I'm like, oh, never mind.
No,
never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I always appreciate. So yeah, I think we've gone through everything else, so we can get into talking about some elements of cozy mysteries, shall we?
Let's do it.
I think that, I mean, if you're thinking of a cozy mystery, if you're thinking of mystery in general, right, you're like, obviously, yes, there's usually like either a kidnapping or a murder or a theft of some kind. And I think that mysteries, more often than not, mysteries have a tendency to be led by some sort of like law enforcement adjacent character. So they're a detective or an officer in some way, shape, or form, or they might even be like a lawyer, like the lawyer who's looking into this to try and prove that their client's innocent, whatever the situation is. But I find that when you get into the cozy mysteries, you kind of flip that on its head a little bit, because in what I've experienced, and I've read a good number of cozy mysteries, the vast majority of them, the main character has no law enforcement, like, background or anything at all. As a general rule, they are a normal person with a normal job who stumble into whatever the situation happens to be.
Well, I kind of see the cozy mystery as almost like an extension of like, you know, like the kids mystery. Like you've got like your Nancy Drew, you've got your
Hardy Boys,
Famous Five, Hardy Boys, like all this, like. They're not law enforcement.
I would say
kids,
I would say that like those types of stories are just the young adult version of a cozy mystery.
That's
really.
What I'm saying. Like the cozy mystery is like the grown up version of the young adult mystery. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's no law enforcement. It's not as serious. Like yes, like sometimes the mystery itself is serious. Like maybe somebody died or there's been a murder or something. But because, to your point, the person who's leading the investigation is not typically a detective, or maybe there is a detective, but the actual investigator is your main character.
There is a detective a lot.
Yes, there is. You're right. And they're kind of disgruntled that this other character is
they're always mad. I mean, I will say, like, if you go with, like, the very, like, the formulaic sort of aspect of it, the majority of the time, and again, majority, I'm not talking about all the time, most of the time, in a cozy mystery, your protagonist is female.
Yeah.
Or female identifying anyway. They, again, that's it, are not a law enforcement officer in any way, shape, or form. They just have a good amount of deductive reasoning and are able to kind of like aid in the investigation, and usually...
Right place at the right time.
Yeah, and usually in... against the officer's wishes, whatever detective character does show up, they start looking into what's happened themselves. A lot of the time, that's also because whatever, like usually a murder anyway, whatever is taken place like in their place of business or in their home or in the place of business or the home of someone that they're close to, like a family member or a close friend or something, or they have a family member or a close friend who's been accused of doing something that they haven't done. So they take it upon themselves to look into this and try to find a solution for it. But more often than not, because the lead character is female, I find a lot of the time the detective character winds up becoming a love interest.
Yeah, I mean,
particularly in the series, like if they've got like 3, 4, 5 books.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's always like a moment at the beginning where they get warned off by the detective,
and then they kind of realize that she's smart.
Yeah,
so.
Like, oh, I actually need her help.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of that. You do get like, flip gender roles. So like Castle was one of those, right?
Yes.
They did a whole ass series about the woman being the detective, and then this like quirky, fun person on the side, like,
author,
helping.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then of course you've got like there's many series out there to Meaghan's point where it's like you've got kind of the same main character who's a non-detective.
Yes. Who regularly
investigates because they find themselves in the right place.
They're like this magnet for like chaos, basically, where it's like all these murders happen around them and you're like, God damn, this must be exhausting. Yeah. You've seen more dead bodies than a coroner. Like, what is this?
And then you're like, is it you?
Well, I mean, you know what? I'm like, if this were in the real world and not like in a novel, I'm like, my God, somebody.
Miss Marple.
Yeah, they'd arrest you for something. Yeah, Miss Marple's an excellent example of like how cozy mysteries have been around for a very long time.
Poirot.
Because, Poirot I find is a little bit more straight detective fiction.
True, and because he is Detective Poirot.
Exactly.
Isn't he? Yeah.
And there are usually, I find Poirot has higher stakes in his a lot of the time. Like it's a little bit less like, it's like Miss Marple mysteries I find are more toned down. Yeah. Whereas like some of the subject matter anyway of the Poirot stuff is a little bit more serious and severe, and there tend to be like slightly like there's a little more action to them, whereas I find the Miss Marple ones have a lot more to do with her reasoning out, like actual like on her own, like working towards reasoning out what's happened and what the mystery is that needs to be solved. True. And and I find the majority of the time that's like a lot of what these cozy mysteries kind of have that's different that way is that the stakes tend to be lower.
They do.
Not always.
But sometimes there's a murder in there, right?
Oh, there's usually, I find there's usually a murder. I just mean that like the stakes seem a little bit less intense than like in a thriller.
And would you say that that's because they're supposed to be a little bit quirkier? They're trying to like tone down the severity of the situation.
Yeah, it's a little cuter than in a because like I find like a thriller is where you're more likely to get something that's like, oh, here's your unreliable narrator who's like a functional alcoholic and can't remember half the stuff that's happening to them, like all those sorts of types of stories where like, you know, your girl on the train kind of thing. Whereas if you get into like a Miss Marple mystery or like any of the other really big ones, like there's I can't even think of half the names off the top of my head, but they're like the tons of series that exist. You know, Hannah Swenson, there's one like anyway, whatever. All of those ones, that person is usually not an unreliable narrator, and they're usually not like a mess of a human being in the same way. Like they're maybe like, oh, I'm between jobs and I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing and stuff like that, but they're not like I'm a drug addict or
no, they're just like they're kind of like a quirky, like fun bystander that's just there to like get the message to the reader
and to be like the everyman. Like it feels like if I stumbled into a situation like this, because again,
this
like
is
I'm
how
not
I would act.
because I'm not law enforcement, I don't have any substance abuse problem.
Make a bunch of lame jokes to ease the tension, like
and go home to my cat at the end of the day. Like
exactly.
Probably what I'd be doing.
Yeah.
So, and also, and I think because there's an element of cozy cuteness to these, there are so often animals involved in some way, shape, or form. Everybody's got a pet, or they work at a shop where the pet shows them where the dead body is and stuff. Like there's so there's like often.
Like the twist at the end, like the pet. It's because of the pet or
like
something.
The animal like showed them what
they was talking the whole time.
Yeah, that's it. Or like the animal showed them what they needed to see and stuff like that. It happens so often.
But again, and you get that in the young adult ones too.
Oh,
right?
100%.
Yeah, it's like an excuse for like adults to read young adult mystery.
Kind of, right? That's it. It's like a little reasoning of just like, oh, and there's a dog. Yay!
Yay! Pretty much. Cat's gonna tell me where to go.
Pretty much. Because I would say the vast majority of the time, these cozy mysteries, and again, like it can be different. You find like a lot of, you know, books and series that are different, but God, if they don't 80% of the time revolve around food and books. Like if they don't take place in a bookshop, a library, a bakery, a restaurant of some kind, I would be shocked. Most of the time I'm like, oh wow, that's really different. Like it's got to be, and it's always small town.
Yeah.
Because it's a smaller cast of characters that way, so you get closer to your locked room mystery without actually being.
Well, there's also like this like element of like characters knowing each other or having known each other for a very long time, even if they're just acquaintances. And so that's where, again, the coziness and then the small town comes in, because
which is also cozy. Because I mean, like,
are you gonna have a cozy mystery in like the middle of New York City?
No, that's it. It won't be cozy. Then it'll be like a thriller, like a detective thriller or something like that. Whereas if you have a cozy mystery in the middle of Stars Hollow, it's cozy because it's a cute little town.
I am rewatching Gilmore Girls.
Of course you are. It's that time of year.
It's that time of year.
But you know what I mean? Like it's like it's so much cozier to be like, oh, this is happening in like this cute little tiny town where that's it. All the business owners know each other, and the lead, as someone who's not law enforcement, will have a much easier time questioning people and finding out information.
They also tend to be very wary of law enforcement.
Yes, exactly. And in a larger city, people are going to be like, I'm not fucking talking to you, random person, like that I've never met before. Yeah. That's it. So it's I think it can happen, and I'm sure there are so many cozy mystery series out there. I'm sure that there is one or two that take place in a larger city of some sort. And if there isn't,
then we've just given you an idea.
Then we've given someone an idea. Make it cozy, but somehow make it in a city at the same time.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You could do that if you made it in like a particular borough of a city or something.
I was going to say, I'm like, you could totally do that where it's like the, I don't know, like the committee of like sandwich shops get together.
Yeah.
And they're all
oh my God, that'd be so cute.
Like solve a mystery or something.
Yeah, that's true. No, you could definitely do something like that. That would be really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what works really well with the cozy mysteries too is that if you read a thriller, so often your lead is a mess. Like they're a messy person. Whereas if you read the cozy mystery, more often than not, your lead's like very endearing because they're quick-witted and they're clever about the way that they go about doing things and they're determined to fix this problem, solve the mystery.
Well, again, it's like it comes from it being like in a small town or like a character that they know. It's like they have that like need to put closure on this situation because then otherwise it's gonna taint their vision of their town or their people or like whatever, you know. Whereas like if you're talking about law enforcement, big city, like everything's like not very personal. It's like, well, if we didn't, if we solve it, we solve it. If we don't, then
but they're all like overworked with crazy caseloads and stuff. It's much easier for it to be such a focus if we're in a small town where murder rarely occurs. You know, it's like not something that happens very often. So the very tiny police force is going to be able to actually focus their efforts on this.
Yep. And like I find that not a lot, but sometimes in these cozy mysteries, it's like a really like what's the word, like it's like an extravagant like thing that's happened, like it's like something really shocking where you're just like oh my gosh,
yes,
like,
and
wow.
again that's it. If you're in a huge city, well, unfortunately murders occur on a semi-regular
it's hard
basis
to be shocked by it,
but if you're in a small town where there's a really low crime rate, yes, someone being killed during a dinner party is going to be really shocking to the whole community. Dinner party. Have you guys watched Mythic Quest? If you haven't, you should. It adds an element of I guess like how personal the story is in a way because the lead themselves, again, if you were like some rando in Brooklyn and came across something like this in this way, like law enforcement would handle it and you would step away from the situation and
never think about it again.
No, that's it. You wouldn't get involved.
Wouldn't get involved.
No, but if you're in a small town in New Hampshire or something, you're much more likely, it makes sense in my head when I'm reading these books for that character to be more invested in what's going on.
Agreed.
Because they probably knew the person who died and therefore start looking into what happened.
Yep. Totally.
To that person. And in some cases as well, something will happen like within very close proximity of them. So sometimes they're considered suspects as well, which adds your extra little amount of banter between your detective character and your lead character. Yeah. Because of course they're like, yeah, okay, fine. But like you could have done this. And the lead's like, no, I didn't know.
No, I could not.
No, I could not have. Yeah. And cozy mysteries I find very often to lead to like enemies to lovers arcs for characters.
Because again, it's like, it's so personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it very often creates that in the first one or two books, like, oh, we don't get along very well because like you basically accused me of murder before. And then I had to prove that was not the case at all. Yeah. And then slowly but surely over time, we develop like a good working relationship, which becomes a personal relationship, which becomes a romantic relationship, right? Which I've seen happen in several different stories like this that I've read where you can already tell you're there and like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. Also, cozy mysteries are like rom-coms. There's always a quirky best friend.
Oh, this is true. Or like there's always somebody
or like a
really
quirky family member. Yeah. So like they live with their weird aunt or their grandma, or they have like a really good friend that they work with who's like a little bit funny.
Yeah. There's always going to be one.
Yes. And a lot of the people as well, like the characters who are considered suspects, let's say throughout the course of the book, are always very like particular people. There's no like bland random characters. It's everybody has like their own like established sort of persona and personality because of course everybody's a suspect. Like Scream, everybody's a suspect.
But again, everybody knows everybody. Scream to an extent is
a
cozy mystery.
It's
I know there's like a lot of like blood and gore.
It's a slasher. Well, not really.
Well, not really.
In the newer ones there is, but not in the original film.
But like they always know each other really well, right?
And it's also
it's the group of friends who's trying to figure out who
and
it
is. It's in Woodsboro,
yeah,
and Woodsboro is supposed to be like a smaller town in California. So technically,
Scream is technically.
I consider Scream like a whodunit kind of thing because there's that whodunit aspect in every film of like who's Ghostface in this one. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like who is it? So yeah,
great franchise.
Love that. Looking forward to the next one whenever it comes out.
I was gonna say, I'm like, is there another one already?
No. No, not with the strike going on right now and everything too. We're going to be waiting for quite a while.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's normal. It is what it is. Support the SAG-AFTRA strike, guys.
Y'all take your time.
And the WGA strike. Everybody really, like, I know, you know, we're doing this for fun and as like in like a little just like, you know, for something fun for us to be doing. But when we talk about the movies and stuff like that, you know what, we wouldn't have anything to talk about if it weren't for writers and actors. So, you know, yeah, okay, maybe you're frustrated that the projects that you were looking forward to or new seasons of certain shows were being delayed, but people deserve to be compensated for what they're doing and treated as human beings and not as automatons. So,
not using their identities like for AI and stuff.
All of the stuff going on with that is absurd. So, you know what, support the SAG-AFTRA strike. We do, and I really hope that this leads to some good negotiations for the unions and that they're able to really get people at least a lot closer to what they deserve for what they're doing.
Agree.
Yeah. Anyway, we digressed, but here we are. Do you guys read cozy mysteries? Have you ever read cozy mysteries? You know,
do you agree with us?
Yeah.
With
do
the
you
elements
think
that we've
have we
talked
like
about?
forgotten stuff?
Yeah,
we probably have.
Yep.
So you can feel free to let us know all about that over on Instagram at fullybookedCA and at Threads at fullybookedCA as well. And you can also check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/book was way better. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.